There was another time on the internet where he told his followers, I believe in a video, that I have a T-slur voice. This is something that he said a lot. If you don't know what the T-slur is, I've got a book titled it on my shelf.
I would bet at least $20 that as soon as I click the video, this guy's gonna have the tranny voice.
Heard that they are actually trans-abled now.
Things non-binary people can do.
I'm gonna be calling you she. So when she's done playing dress up and pretending like she has a mental illness,
A fat queer. Yeah, bitch.
it's just like, I don't know why you flex being in a wheelchair. I feel like you want those oppression points.
Hey you. Yeah, you, come here. You have been selected for jury service. That means your YouTube account was randomly selected to assist with today's court hearing. Thank you for responding so promptly. The court will try its best to get this case presented as efficiently as possible. Today, we will share stories about one Kalvin Garrah, and the jury will decide his verdict. After hearing all the evidence, we encourage you to think about both sides before finally deciding whether Kalvin Garrah is guilty or not guilty. Wow, what's up rebels? My name is Willy and I'm one half of Leo and Willy. We are engaged, we are queer, and today I am here to do a deep dive into the divisive, controversial hot mess that was, or still is, Kalvin Garrah. You know that annoying thing that sometimes happens when a white public figure gets exposed for having a racist past, and white fans swarm to the comment sections to say, "We forgive you." It's like, hey Becky, hey Jonathan the Bard, we forgive you? Me? Huh? Well, I became that in my last video. I did. In my last video where I dived ever so deeply into the life of Ariel Scarcella. Well, I made some pretty sweeping statements that gave the same "we forgive you" energy to Kalvin Garrah. I tend to attribute age to wisdom, so it's a lot easier to forgive an 18-year-old Kalvin Garrah than it is to forgive a 37-year-old Ariel Scarcella. Except I'm not part of the we community that Kalvin offended. I'm truly sorry for accepting apologies that were clearly not meant for me. As some self-punishment, I decided to do some more research, and whilst I was there, I thought, might as well take down some notes. May as well set up the camera and do my thing. Truly, I believed, and still kind of believe, that Kalvin had done the work to try and undo his harmful past. However, I truly recognise that that's a bold thing to say, especially when people are still affected by that very same past. So instead, I invite you, the jury, to court today to decide his verdict, whilst I present both sides of the argument. As Kalvin is a budding lawyer, I am sure he'll appreciate the court's opinion. I want to be clear though that unlike the last deep dive subject matter, Kalvin has at least tried to acknowledge some of his wrongdoing. Were those minimal apology videos enough to silence their hate from those still up problematic videos? Also, where is he now? Kalvin! In the last video, I said 300 likes and I'll do another deep dive. You liked again, so I dived again. Just want to say I appreciate all the lovely comments from the last video, and I appreciate a lot of you like the musical elements of the last video, but this video didn't seem as fitting. The only fitting musical song I could have thought of was like Chicago, Cell Block Tango. Also, if I'm correct, which I might not be, I think there's literally like 7 people on stage during the Cell Block Tango, and it's literally one of me, so even attempting to do it would be ridiculous. He didn't do it! Unless he did it. Kalvin has himself to blame. But if he did it, would you forgive it? Watch and see if you still feel the same. So without further ado, let's get into it. Between the ages of 2016 and 2021, a fresh-faced, hair-flicking, unfiltered Kalvin Garrah establishes himself in the YouTuber circle of sellouts. A teen sadly full of self-hatred, projecting phobic, divisive rhetorics, which at its most popular went to about 300,000 plus subscribers. For many, Kalvin was a source of great entertainment, especially those with more right-wing leaning views. He amassed an audience of hundreds and thousands of followers, many of which had very little respect for the trans community. Because there he was, a willing trans person ready to co-sign their toxic views. They probably thought his pronouns was pit. I'll stop. And for those who didn't fit his binary ideologies, they would soon become targets for Kalvin. He would gain millions of views mocking, laughing and misgendering members of his own community.
You piss me off. You are not trans. You're just not. Like, I'm sorry. Literally, being trans is a medical condition. You cannot just be like, well, I'm a fucking willow. Like, I can go like back and forth. Like, one day, like, I'm this, and one day I'm that.
In summary, Kalvin was a bully. A bully with a lot of attention, which can be dangerous in the wrong set of hands. If you are someone who is already suffering with a low sense of self, to suddenly being validated by masses of right-wing manipulators who found themselves a teenage puppet to beat to their toxic little drum. All of that was way too much power and temporary self-worth than one young Kalvin Garrah could handle. Instead, he would lean into the unhealthy attention, utilize it, monopolize it to solidify his brand as the mean teen on the internet. No person fell so deeply victim to this than Brennan Beckwith. Brennan is a trans YouTuber with a now 43-ish thousand subscribers, but he had 2,000 subscribers when Kalvin decided to set his guard dogs on him. Brennan, like most left-leaning YouTubers, would use his account to spread positivity, classify his style as long-form essay-style videos that would be there to create conversation and educate. In 2017, you will see a younger Brennan sporting more eccentric styling choices. This style would typically align with what right-wingers would classify as the woke left aesthetic, but I would classify as a serve. This meant Kalvin saw an opportunity in Brennan, an opportunity to bully him. Brennan would soon become Kalvin's target. Kalvin pushed so hard that Brennan was forced to leave the internet for 3 years. Let's talk about that video, shall we? 2017, Kalvin would upload a hate video entitled "Trans Guy Reacts to Crazy Trans Trender." I would like to note that after delaying, I guess the money was good, Kalvin did eventually delete this video, but I have a compilation of what went down. Trigger warning, this is a Kalvin Garrah video. You will be triggered. I've chosen not to censor it to accurately depict what Brennan went through. If you would like to skip this section, then please skip to the number that, for my editing purposes, will appear on the screen in 3, 2, 1. Future edited me's gonna love that. Thank you, sexy. You're welcome, darling. Anyways, back to Kalvin.
It was just some cringy SJW talking about how she's trans, and so I decided that looks like a great video for me to react to, because who she is, or I mean, who she is. But this is why right-wing conservatives don't fucking like us, because they see this bullshit. I don't even know why I'm laughing. Like, I'm honestly laughing because this is so ridiculous, and I just know that this person is not trans. I can think of maybe why you hate your body, and I don't think it's because you're trans. She was on TV for millions of Americans to watch and look and be like, that's what those trans people are like. That's why, I don't really give a shit about your videos that you make.
In the comments.
Shut up. Look at her smiling. Like, if this was me and there was no option for top surgery, I would be crying. Like, I would kill myself. This is my least favorite argument that trenders make. It looks like Brennan here is gonna tell us about her dysphoria, and I'm pretty fucking excited to hear about it. Especially with her cleavage. And if you can openly be on YouTube in front of, how many subscribers do you have? 2,000 subscribers? Probably more people have seen your videos than that. I will never believe for a second that you are transgender. I can count maybe 15 girls in my school that all look like that. Well, if I say that I have dysphoria, then nobody can say I'm not trans anymore because, well, I have dysphoria now, and how are they gonna know that I don't? How are they gonna, you know, say that I don't? Oh my god, that's definitely a trender pose. Like, if you see someone who goes like this, they're definitely a transgender. But 99% of trans guys would not reference their chest as their boobs. That's fucking weird. She is so happy to say that she loves her tits. This has to be satire enough. Yeah, no shit, it's not gonna be flat enough because there's still fucking piles of fat on your chest.
You should just believe people when they say they're trans.
No, because you can't just say you're trans. Like, that's not, you can't just say you're trans and be trans. I can't just say I'm blind and be blind. I can't just say I have cancer and be cancer. How ridiculous this is, and like, it's literally triggering my personal dysphoria because this is literally mockery of real trans people. Well, guess what, sis? I can see right through you. You are either faking this for attention, or you're genuinely confused. Let me say, Kalvin, why does this affect you? Like, why is this such a big deal to you? I'll tell you why it's such a big fucking deal, and why I'm appalled when so many trans people are completely okay with this. This is why people don't like you. This is why it's harder to gain free surgery from insurance because they see people like this and think it's a cosmetic procedure when really it's a life-changing. It turns out that it looks like Brennan is pansexual and gender fluid, uses heirs pronouns, but you know, it doesn't really matter. So it looks like we're gonna be calling you she. Stop appropriating a medical condition because dysphoria is so debilitating that it's impossible to live with it. I already can't fucking do this shit, man. She was like, these, like, that's not genderqueer overalls. Those are overalls.
This video received well over 1 million views. Brennan did not deserve that. Kalvin's fans, with his encouragement and orders, would then go on to bully Brennan so bad that he would remove all his entire social media presence. After a 3-year break, Brennan eventually returned to YouTube the 19th of October 2020. He came back with a video called Breaking My Silence on Kalvin Garrah, Part 1. That's right, hennies. He gave you a 3-part Netflix series on a YouTube budget. Hashtag, are you still watching? The response series was really good. What a time to be alive! I think it takes a lot of grace to give yourself the time to heal and the time to grow. Brennan took 3 years off instead of reacting impulsively and potentially worsening his own mental health. He was younger than I was now, and I still feel like he handled that more maturely than I would. Kalvin did a video on me like that, I would have responded back, cussing out his grandma. I'm joking. I would have thrown his granddad in too. It was actually quite hard to create the ultimate compilation out of a 3-part series because each episode, if you would, had its own unique served purpose. So instead, let's watch the first couple of minutes of the first ever video because it was the beginning of Brennan's comeback tour, and honeys, it was good.
It's time to talk about this. 3 years ago, Kalvin Garrah made a video about me in which he bullied me for like 30 minutes. But he wasn't just bullying me, he was bullying all of the non-binary people who experience gender dysphoria differently than him. That video fucked me up. He and his fan base bullied me off the platform. I was scared of queer spaces for a long time, and I closeted myself online up until very recently. And today I learned that he deleted the video. It's just gone. I don't know exactly when, and I don't know exactly why, but I'm pretty sure it's because the trans conversation is turning against him, and he's trying to mitigate some of the damage. But the damage is already done. Whether that video is up or not, he hurt me for a long time, and I know that I'm not the only one that he hurt. So if you were personally victimized by Kalvin Garrah or hurt by his rhetoric, please comment on this video or duet me. I want to talk to you and I want to know your story, and I just want to know how big we are.
I want to be clear, I tried to make some elements of my storytelling light because a lot of these stories are actually just full of pain. So if there's an opportunity to bring joy and make some people laugh, I will try to bring that. But what Brennan went through is absolutely no joke. Brennan's story, whilst yes, a story of redemption, still is a story of great sadness. Kalvin delaying removing it and then re-uploading it. I know. Just highlights that he cared way more about the YouTube money and the clout, you know, instead of the mental health of another human being. Something that he wanted us to care about, you know, just a couple years later. But please don't get my words twangled. Being a little shy as a teenager doesn't mean you aren't deserving of compassion as an adult. But Kalvin did a lot of damage to people, and I haven't since seen him use the same energy that he used to bully people to undo the effects of that same bullying. It was almost like he saw Brennan and he was like, you're not sad enough? You don't hate yourself enough? Bet. I'll fix that. For those who may be worried about where Brennan is now, the king's thriving. This photo was actually taken in 2023, so it's not the most recent, but he looks good, so I thought, go ahead, king, flex on them, let them know. I think it's super worth noting that both versions of these Brennans deserved respect. There are still videos up on Kalvin's YouTube account today that are still harmful. Kalvin was truly impressionable at his peak. He was such a bully that it was almost easier to join him than to accidentally fall victim to him. Because everybody was a target. Non-binary, target. Don't look like me, target. Use neo-pronouns, target. Don't fit my perfect understanding of binary ideologies, you guessed it, target. He once had friendships with the likes of Storm Ryan or Sam Collins. He would soon isolate himself from a lot of people because they just got over his bullshit. Not to mention that he was dumped by every single one of his girlfriends, probably because he was a massive bully at the time. Could have just been a coincidence. I think it's worth noting that Storm Ryan was also such a piece of shit back then. The difference between him and Kalvin was he actually ended up removing everything that was harmful to people. In fact, he's only really featured on Kalvin's channel because he won't delete them. Kalvin babes, what you saying? Lift the shackles off Ryan's feet so he can praise?
Okay, we have decided to be really positive. I want to change myself and be positive. Not only do I just want to be the most brutally honest YouTuber.
There's nothing to confess for, except for being too honest. Way too honest. Bluntly honest. People hate me for my honesty.
How many people are gonna shade in this video?
I hate transgenders. Like, I just really do. They're like, call me fucking Z. I'm not gonna lie, there's definitely people I would not use their pronoun of choice. I guess we're going to jail. I feel like the trans people that actually take an issue with this are the ones that they don't really look like. What? I didn't. Sorry, I'm deaf. Asian, deaf, disabled. Picture of me with Shellerman and the picture of him on the wall. I would never take money for someone for a trans surgery, like unless it was like an insurance type of thing. But there really are trans people on Twitter that are like, you have to pay to my GoFundMe. I deserve it. I deserve it.
Hey guys, Ryan here.
Ryan and Kalvin here today.
I am 4 months on testosterone and I'm doing great.
If Kalvin really is sorry, which, for the record, the prosecution doesn't believe, then why are those harmful videos still up? I'll tell you why. Kalvin's earlier content, while still very successful, saw an average of about 20,000 views. But selling out his community and building a little empire of hate would see that 20,000 average go up to 200,000 views. And we already know that the most inflammatory stuff could exceed 1 million. Those numbers are enticing to any YouTuber, let alone a teen. Now, when you think of 1 million views, it's really easy to see like huge money bags in your eyes, but the reality is, it doesn't pay as much as you think. Do you know what RPM and CPM stand for? Oh, you do? Right, well, didn't plan for that. For anyone who may not know, CPM stands for cost per miles, and it's basically what advertisers will pay for every 1,000 views. And RPM, revenue per miles, just basically calculates the money that you actually take. You know, after YouTube takes a cheeky little 45% cut! Kalvin's earlier average of 20,000 views would see him get anything between $100 to $140. However, YouTube's safeguarding policy means that they can implement a limited revenue clause. This means that any videos that YouTube considers more mature could have limited ad revenue. Because, believe it or not, but a lot of companies don't actually like their products to be advertised alongside gobshites like this.
There are some girls who are like, I love my penis. Oh, do you mean girl, boy, and non-binary?
No.
Have you guys ever noticed that trans trenders, they always pick names that like aren't gender specific? Like most of the trans guys I know will pick a name like Kalvin or Connor or Fred. I don't know, like a male name. Well, every single time I've motherfucking seen a trender, they pick a name that's like Willow or like Zen.
At its complete lowest, Kalvin could have received about $50 for a video receiving 20,000 views. Whereas receiving 1 million views could get you up to $6,000, and even at limited revenue would go down to about $3,000. And don't get me wrong, I think receiving $3,000 for a 1 million viewed video is ridiculous, but for an 18-year-old, that level of money and that level of clout can be considered really impressive, and at the very least incredibly enticing. Kalvin would infamously always say things like, oh, I don't get revenue, this is demonetized anyway, I'm not monetized, expecting people who only know about YouTube on a very surface level to be like, oh my god, he says all of this and he doesn't even get paid. Not all heroes wear capes. Whereas most people who are actually on YouTube versus consuming YouTube know that most money comes from sponsorships, because YouTube pays jack shit. I'm joking, YouTube. Don't shadow ban this one, please. They told me to say it. Yeah, Kalvin obviously got sponsorships. How do you know, I hear you ask? Because, believe it or not, there can actually be legal repercussions for those who withhold that information. And if anybody here knows about the law, it's our Kalvin. Kalvin gave Major I'm the spokesperson for normal trans people energy.
I
hate trannies.
Take me off the bench, coach. Pick me. Pick me. It's a classic. If I present myself as the good transgender, then my enemies will pick on the bad ones first. Part of his self-appointed power gave him and others the impression that if he said, hey, this person's not a TERF, other people should just follow that blindly, despite the person in question often always being very TERF-like. Like the incident of August 2019. Do y'all remember Gyno Supremacist? Nuh-uh. It's alright, my darlings, I've got you. Gyno Supremacist was a social media presence proudly owned by a lesbian who led trans exclusionary radical views. The real Scarsada, please stand. In her heydays, her tweets would receive a lot of traction. They would be highly critiqued, but by a lot of people with very small platforms, and endorsed by a few people with very large platforms, which meant that the hate actually became a lot louder. One of the reasons you may have not heard of this massive a-hole and why I cannot provide you with more receipts is because her TERF-like views got so bad that her account eventually got suspended. Now, just for a second, entertain me, please, por favor. I want you to think about the fact that JK Twatface, can't say her name, don't want to get sued. Ooh la la, she's still on the loose. Account not suspended. But Gyno Supremacist was somehow bad enough that she did get suspended. She was known for pushing LGB without the T, misgendering trans women and being an absolute I don't have many of the pre-suspension tweets and they've proved so difficult to locate. But, come here. People started suspecting that a second account resurfaced about a year later in 2020 because an account that had a very, very similar name started tweeting similar things. You can choose to take this bit with a pinch of salt because I can't prove these are the same people, but I will show you the tweets that have since resurfaced. I'm whispering because this bit is not fact checked. No LGB without the T, but somehow here I am, an L who doesn't give a shit about the T, and yet I haven't stopped being an L. Using they pronouns for people who you know who they are is literally not normal or natural, and all the they thems demanding it are freaks. Hello TERF Twitter. I can't tell you for a fact that Gyno Supremacist and Gyno Supremacists are the exact same people. I can just tell you that they tweet the exact same thing. And this was endorsed because there was King Kalvin, ruler of nothing, offering pardons for TERFs like her. I had to dig deep for this one because Kalvin tried to delete it, so you're welcome. The tweet says, and leave Gyno Supremacist alone. She's actually chill and not as radical as y'all were trying to make her out to be. Y'all need to stop sending me 1 to 2 tweets someone made claiming she's the worst TERF you've ever seen. Kalvin's stance on a lot of these matters, which, yeah, were fueled by a lot of self-hatred, gave these TERFs a lot of encouragement to continue their transphobic ideology. I object! I'm literally about to wrap
I know, but he was just a child. Didn't you make a mistake when you were a kid?
Come back. That was awkward. Anyway, where was I? Hey, Dad! I'm joking. Think, Willy, think. Kalvin encouraging TERFs. He would become the stamp of approval they sought to continue being on the internet. Gyno Supremacist would go as far as to tweet a DM between Kalvin and her where he absolutely endorses her bullshit. Can I ask, do you think my views are transphobic? You seem level-headed, so I'd appreciate your judgment. No. If you'd acknowledge that gender dysphoria isn't a delusion and that people can benefit from transitioning, you're not transphobic. In fact, you're level-headed. Trans people are effing crazy. The alt-left side of the community is a cult, and you're 100% right in saying that they convince 15-year-old girls with body issues that they're boys. I actually think it's really sad to see a trans person speak so poorly about their own community. I think that really speaks to a lot of self-hatred. One of the things that he really pushed was the idea of a trans voice. He would say it in a more derogatory way, I'm just not going to entertain it. He would put out these weird binary rules that people should follow in his mighty little kingdom. A lot of young people were affected by him. Am I man enough? Am I woman enough? Do I stand right? Does my voice sound okay? Do I have the T voice? All of these insecurities that were just projected and created by the person who had the biggest insecurities of all. Just because you don't like yourself, it doesn't mean other people have to dislike themselves. You worked overtime to create such a toxic environment within your own community. I, the prosecution, genuinely believe that you and the rest of your sellout circle slowed down the progress of so many individuals. I believe that you played on things that people found dysphoric, capitalized it, and pushed it out even further. I am a true believer that hurt people hurt people. Your internalized transphobia and your internalized self-hate wasn't a feeling that you felt alone. A lot of people who watched your content felt the same thing. Instead of cultivating a healthy community of people who could uplift each other, Garrah, you played into every single one of these people's insecurities, pushed it further, put them out on display until they felt just as crappy about themselves as you feel about yourself. And that's the biggest shame of it all. Never thought I'd be one of these people to say this, but where were his parents? I object again! Your Honor! Okay. The question is whether my client is guilty today, not whether he was guilty in 2016. I am not here to minimize the damage Kalvin caused at the peak of his popularity. I am here to discuss what led to these views, the acknowledgements he eventually did make about his poor behavior, and that dark period of transmedicalism. So to begin, Kalvin was a kid when he joined YouTube, barely a teenager. A teenager who, as previously mentioned by the prosecution, was filled with a lot of self-hate.
So from the title of this video, you can see I'm going to talk about why I hate being trans. There are a lot of reasons that I love being trans, and I think it's given me thousands of opportunities. But there are some things obviously to hate about it, and some things I have to learn to love and to hate and just to accept. So no, I don't absolutely hate being trans, but there are a lot of things I hate about being trans, and I did hate being trans for a while, which is why I never came out.
It came into public attention when LGBT plus content creators were receiving masses of views for simply being LGBT. Unlike Ariel Scarcella, who rose as one of the very few lesbian content creators, Kalvin had other young trans guys performing to a similar level of success as he was. And they were all on the up and up at the exact same time, so Kalvin had some competition. It's not an excuse, but just a possibility that someone of his age, with as much need for validation, full of self-hatred, something the whole court can agree on, would have pushed to be way more radical to set himself aside from his competitors. This doesn't excuse what he said or what he did, but there were people much older than Kalvin affirming him with the validation he truly felt he needed.
She can roll you over with a wheelchair.
You have to put a picture in the wheelchair there. Please put the picture.
I can't stop to pee myself.
Ariel used him like an accessory for views. Blair and Kalvin were both mutually used to catch a buzz of their newfound hype. But they were adults. Kalvin was 16 years old when he started YouTube. And when he was receiving millions of views, he was 18. Kalvin started to show signs of growing up and empathy towards other people. What about that hour-long apology video in 2021? That was complete and utter garbage. Basically blamed his own fans, saying that they were going on a witch hunt, you know, as opposed to the things that he actually did. Oh, I'm sorry. Is the concept of interrupting an issue now? So anyways, Kalvin started to show signs of growing up and empathy towards other people. His personal dysphoria led to him metaphorically bleeding on other people, and whilst that's absolutely not okay, how long should my client be responsible for the things that he said and did as a teenager? The defense believes that Kalvin has shown enough growth today to not be charged for his teenage offenses.
I have always had the propensity to change. If I believe that something that I used to believe is wrong, or if I believe that I said something stupid, 99% of the time I will sit here and I will say I was wrong. There have been so many, if I ever made a video calling myself a female, I was wrong, okay? I would never fucking do that now. Anytime that I said non-binary people that have dysphoria aren't trans, I was wrong and I'm sorry. I believe that anybody with dysphoria is transgender or can identify as transgender and has a reason to transition, okay?
And trust me, I agree, knowing the things that he did and acknowledging them doesn't change the effects of what he actually did. In fact, the more I digged into his past, the more appalled I was by my client. His actions and words led to many people suffering. And it hurts me to say this, but his words would go as far as to make people attempt to self-exit. Due to the seriousness of self-exiting, I will not be showing the things Kalvin said or did that led to that. No deep dive is worth reliving that trauma. The defense does have a screenshot from one of Kalvin's victim's friends. The victim, Noah, attempted to self-exit after being bullied by Kalvin. This is going to be a very hard read, so please skip this bit if you aren't in the right place to consume something like this. I've been at the hospital since 3 because Noah tried to take their life last night while I was asleep. I'm going to be taking a break from this account for a while. Please do not reply to this. I will not be able to read or reply to anything. It can be easy to not give power to a few people making fun of you on the internet, But when you're an abuse survivor struggling with mental health and autism, and 500,000 people are picking your every word apart and taking your identity out of context, it has impact. When you're recovering from years of childhood abuse and are being called a paedophile by thousands of people because you jokingly refer to yourself as a boy, it has impact. When social media is the only place you felt accepted in the world and now you have nowhere because people are scouring the internet to find you, it has impact. When you're recovering from an eating disorder and your weight is ridiculed in front of a crowd the size of the city you live in, it has impact. You can't defend yourself, you feel powerless, you shut down, you try to end it. Before you watch that video, ready to laugh at a person who's just trying to survive in a way that's comfortable to them, put yourself in their shoes. Do better. Wow, that's actually very hard. There are videos online with more detailed accounts about that particular line of information. My top recommended video would be from Cops Hate Mo. Cops Hate Mo produced a knockout punch that I believe my client needed. He was humbled.
Because surely, Mr. Garrah, surely you would know, what with your big law student brain and everything, that is a very serious accusation to throw out there. I'd love to give Kalvin the benefit of the doubt, I really would. But unfortunately for him, the proof I have is actually from one of his Instagram posts. That's a bit awkward, isn't it? So there we are. Even when Kalvin is not explicitly attacking someone for being a transgender, he is still causing harm. He is so irresponsible with his platform and he is incapable of adequately addressing such sensitive topics.
They delivered an eloquent and thorough analysis of my client's behaviour at the time. Their views in the trans community were slowly becoming more left-leaning. After Cops Hate Mo's video, things started to change. Suddenly, Kalvin is cornered, forced to either grow up and row toward more inclusivity with his community, or sink alone. Think my client really started to see that? I have to ask the call. Beside apologising and cleaning up his content, what more would you expect of my client, with him being the age he was at the time? Would you expect him to say, donate all his YouTube money? Maybe spend more time creating daily apology videos for all the harm that he caused? If your answer to both the above is yes, then the defence believes that you truly are not taking into account the age of my client when he was at the peak of his success. The brain's hemispheres has 4 different lobes. But do you know the function of the frontal lobe? The brain's frontal lobe manages the thinking, self-control, judgment, and more. The brain's frontal lobe is fully formed at the age of 25, which means that it's a lot easier for younger people to make poor decisions. This is one of the many reasons why there are laws put in place to stop children being trialed as adults. And this is pretty much supported worldwide. For example, in South Korea, their juvenile criminal system goes up to the age of 19, and you're still considered a minor at the age of 20 in Thailand unless you're married. Kalvin made poor choices in life at a time where he was most predisposed to making poor choices. The difference between him and many others who shared similar thoughts is he had a camera on him. A regular occurrence in the comment section of Kalvin expose videos is a bunch of people commenting things like, oh my god, I used to follow him when I used to think like that. The only difference between those people and Kalvin is he documented his mistakes, and the internet is forever. If this trial was set in 2018, I'd prosecute him myself, but it's not, and we have to let people grow up. What's the point of doing right in the end if you're always going to be remembered by your earlier failings? That sort of energy only encourages people to never change. Let he without sin cast the first rock and all that. Many would argue, hey, I'm 16 or 17 or 18 and I would never do anything like that now. And you're probably right. You wouldn't now, but you may have back then. Think of what type of environment YouTube must have been in 2016 for Kalvin to even get away with half his nonsense. An era where even unproblematic kings like Noah Fintz were pushing trans-medicalist ideology. It's not impossible to see why it would have been easy to be a piece of shite at a time where being a piece of shite was popular. Times have certainly changed and we certainly have more acceptance of people who don't fit into gender binary roles. People are speaking up. There are people on the internet now, like those great YouTubers, Leo and Willy, who you should absolutely subscribe to right now. And there are others on the internet who have absolutely no problem calling this out. Now, let's talk about trans medicalism. I know. This bit can be a lot to process in such a short span of time. So I'm gonna make this bit as accessible to as many people as possible by rapping it. Transmedicalism, or true scum for short. Dysphoria is compulsory, a summary for the court. Being trans is an illness only HRT can fix. You're a woman, act like one. Every man should wanna... The issue with this, some will say, is dividing all like cattle. Don't debate their lives based all on your own eternal struggle. Some would mock and laugh at others, claiming you're not trans enough. Mocking others, making money to disguise their lack of self-love. What? Jenny says qua. Kalvin wasn't, and still isn't, the only content creator who aligned with transmedicalist views. Whilst I, his attorney, don't even agree with transmedicalism, I do believe he has the right to have his own belief system. What he did with that belief system makes him one of my harder clients. But again, he does have the right to have it. Kalvin was known for his inflammatory ways, but honestly, he was only able to keep going because of the many people who affirmed him, who may call him out now, but absolutely did not call him out back then. Whilst the defense and prosecution don't agree on several things, there's one question that we absolutely both can agree on. Where is he now? Hey all, it's Willy here, no prosecution or defense act. You're probably wondering why I chose this court angle. Before I get to that, I'll quickly explain what I know about Kalvin now. Kalvin has since resurfaced on YouTube with a much lighter approach than his old content. He doesn't use it as regularly now, with his latest video being uploaded 7 months ago. He uploads to an average of about 10,000 views now, which is significantly lower than what he was getting when he first started at the age of 16. Lost about 20,000 subscribers since the peak of his success, which isn't bad, but when your sub count is over 250,000 and you're bringing in an average of about 10,000 views, it's a sure sign that Kalvin has certainly lost the interest of the majority of his subscribers. He sings songs now where the mix is terribly unbalanced, but he has a beautiful voice.
I hope you're happy now. I saw you finally made you.
He's still flicking his hair now, which is much longer. Regardless of what you thought of him, we can all agree that that kid had a great head of hair. He started a podcast with another member of the LGBT community called Noah. The irony is not lost on me. Noah's incredibly fun to watch, but if he sees a comment that he doesn't like, he will snap, crackle and pop. So I wouldn't say Kalvin is hanging out with the most emotionally mature audience, but he's certainly hanging out with a fun guy. Quite a few of the comments in his newer content are from people who say, "We miss you, Kalvin, we miss you." So he certainly still has an audience, just significantly smaller. Amongst that support, there is definitely hate. There's also been a swarm of people asking him if he's detransitioned in these comments, I guess because in their eyes he no longer fits their binary standard. A standard he didn't create but certainly perpetuated. Kalvin created an audience of bullies, and now that he no longer feeds them, he's their target now. We see this in the other pick-me's, Ariel Scarcella, Blair White, Buck Angel and more. They truly believe that if they isolate themselves from their own community, they'll be accepted by the other side. Actually, no, scratch that. I don't think they believe that at all. They will never admit it, but these grown-ass YouTube adults absolutely know that they've gone too deep now. Deeper than the dives I'll be producing on every single one of them. They sold their soul a long time ago, and trying to casually come back puts them in a very difficult position from both sides. It's the classic Bud Light conundrum. The majority of us know the story, but for anyone who doesn't, I'll tell you. Bud Light, the beer company, collaborates with Dylan Mulvaney, a public figure who also happens to be a trans woman. Her face gets put on their products, and as a result, far-right twats rebel against the brand. Bud Light lose instant sales from the Go Woke, Go Broke brigade, with several companies cancelling their partnerships because they don't wish to be involved with the drama. In order to try and recoup these funds and get their transphobic customers back, Bud Light issued an apology. Didn't specifically mention Dylan, but it was enough. Our responsibility to America. As the CEO of a company founded in America's heartland more than 165 years ago, I am responsible for ensuring every consumer feels proud of the beer we brew. We're honoured to be part of the fabric of this country. Anheuser-Busch employs more than 18,000 people, and our independent distributors employ an additional 47,000 valued colleagues. We have thousands of partners, millions of fans, and a proud history supporting our communities, military, first responders, sports fans, and hardworking Americans everywhere. We never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. We are in the business of bringing people together over a beer. My time serving this country taught me the importance of accountability and the values upon which America was founded: freedom, hard work, and respect for one another. As CEO of AB, I am focused on building and protecting our remarkable history and heritage. I care deeply about this country, this company, our brands, and our partners. I spend much of my time traveling across America, listening to and learning from our customers, distributors, and others. Moving forward, I will continue to work tirelessly to bring great beers to consumers across our nation. Yikes. Like I said, it wasn't an apology, but we didn't intend to be part of the conversation that divided. That's the bit. Very, very This sort of apology and backtracking then meant that the LGBT community and its allies also didn't want to be involved with Bud Light. Thus me calling it the Bud Light Conundrum, the quickest way to isolate yourself from both sides. The offensive T, Amir Odom, that random Jubilee gay, Blair White, these are people who have metaphorically put Donald Trump on a beer can, so you can't expect them to put Dylan Mulvaney on it anytime soon. Backlash would be filthy! You think those people, them, the first ones that jumped ship, are strong enough to fight against the extreme right? You know the saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Kalvin is in this weird Switzerland position where he hasn't actually pushed rhetoric on any side as an adult. To be clear though, he's never put like Donald Trump on a can, more like someone he considers a trans trender to make fun of. Does this metaphor still work? Terrible babes, absolute trash. Go away. What I'm trying to say is he doesn't sprout the same nonsense he used to, right? And I will say this, I do commend him for being brave enough to do what those a lot older than him have failed to do. Admit when they're wrong. But yeah, some of his audience now make fun of him. You can literally see the opinions change over the years on things like Reddit or just his comment section, where people were once like, oh, we love him, King Kalvin. They now laugh at his appearance, his weight, which is very Kalvin Garrah. Maybe older and more mature Kalvin simply doesn't give a damn, but I think there's one thing I've learned through researching and just the past stuff that I'd already known. Kalvin definitely gives a damn. He definitely cares what people think about him. He is riddled with insecurities and he became a bully instead of an advocate as a result. Is he happy? Well, I don't personally know him, so I'll rephrase the question to, does he look happy in these videos? I will say no. He looks like someone who's fucked around and found out. I unfortunately personally know pain too well to know when someone is trying to disguise it. He's allegedly had issues with drug abuse, allegedly was charged with driving under the influence, and addiction is no joke, so I'm saying this bit just to inform and certainly not to make fun of. Quality of these videos are pretty low. The sound of the podcast is incredibly jarring. You have to turn it up like really high to hear him, but then you get like a jump scare when it all sort of balances out. It made me personally click off it, so I imagine that the retention for those videos are quite low. So why did I choose the cool angle? The answer for me is simple really, because I'm an adult and I'm talking about the past of a subject matter who was a teenager, not Blair White or Ariel Scarcella. I don't take joy in blasting teenagers on the internet. Who Kalvin is now as an adult is a mystery to me. If he was still pushing harmful rhetorics, this would be a very different video. But without giving him a pardon that I certainly don't have the right to give, I am not willing to compromise my own personal integrity to create the most ultimate deep dive ever. This is what I can give you. If I'm going to talk about someone's life as a minor years after the fact, at the very least, I will provide a defense. Even though I'll be incredibly honest, it was really hard to write a defense. I messaged Leo a few times like, wow, this is weak. I would fire my lawyer. And he messaged back something that really stuck with me, and it was, I think that's saying something. And I think he's right. I think it's saying something. Because Kalvin has since been radio silent on his views in 2024, I know just as much as you do. I do actually feel a little bit sorry for him. No, I know, and with no judgment on anyone who still actively dislikes him, I don't know him now, so I don't have that feeling. I also acknowledge that I'm not one of Kalvin's victims. As much as I can empathize and be completely disgusted by a lot of his past, I know that I will never know what it's like to be a victim of Kalvin Garrah, and that privilege allows me to see things from a wider perspective. For me, he's basically disappeared. I personally would rather reserve the energy for the people who are still doing the damage right now, and don't worry, I'm coming for them all. Did I like his old content? Hell no. I think he was unfiltered in a way that made him really difficult to watch, but also unfiltered in a way that made him difficult to not watch. He was naturally charismatic, and if he had used that power for good, he would be an absolute weapon in the YouTube content creation world. Did I like him? No. Do I like him? I don't know him now. Do I forgive him? You know that annoying thing that can sometimes happen when a white celebrity gets exposed for having a racist past, and white fans swarm to the comment section to say, I forgive you. Well, in my last video, I became that, and I don't intend on becoming that again. I have no right to forgive Kalvin. I wasn't one of his victims. The only voice in this story I have is choosing how I wish to tell this story. A story that is so based on public opinion and perception, which is why I encourage you to write your verdict below. Please do share your stories, your testimonies. Let us know why you think what you think. Me and Leo are very small content creators, but the type of audience we wish to cultivate is one of which people can speak their mind while still leading with kindness at the core. We accept kind comments, hate comments, and everything in between because we enjoy engaging with people. Everything here is a conversation where we encourage you to share your thoughts. We won't shut you down for that. Unless you're racist, phobic, sexist, then it's on site. This is my second deep dive, and with time, they will absolutely continue to grow. If you like what we're putting down and this video gets 2,000 likes, I will do a deep dive on Blair White. And she wasn't a child at the time of her offense, so I won't be holding back. Finally, do I find Kalvin guilty or not guilty? After doing the research, bearing in mind I filmed the intro first, so like the jury I could go on this journey and see how I felt along the lines. Both sides had good points and the lawyer was very attractive. After reviewing everything, I, Willy, believe that Kalvin Garrah is